What is going on, fellow web developers? My name is Tyler Potts, and today we're going to learn how you can build your first desktop app without having to use C#, C++, any of those slightly more complicated languages, and just use HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, the exact same stack you currently use to build websites. So what we're going to do is we're going to be using something called Electron. Now, Electron allows you to convert HTML, CSS, and JavaScript into a native app that uses the web view. That is super useful. So I'm going to show you a real quick demo that I've whipped up here. You can see we can have different pages. It literally looks like a web page inside of an app, but you can use like desktop level commands. We're able to access the file system. We're able to access anything that a normal native app can access. We can use those features inside of Electron. Let me just quickly give you a demo. So we have a little Tyler's World here, just something random we've whipped up. And if we open up, I somehow have lost my notes here. Electron app notes. There we go. So here we go. You can see we've got our notes, and I've already created a couple of notes in here. My second note. And here you go. So this is how the app works. What we can do is enter a name for our note. Let's just say YouTube demo note. And then in here we can say, this is my YouTube demo note. Hit save note. And what's going to happen is if we go back here, you can see we have this YouTube demo note, and it saved a note to our desktop, or sorry, to our folder. We can choose the location. You could even have it so you pick the location when you save it. But I'm going to show you how you can set up something like this really easily with Electron. So without further ado, let's get into the tutorial. Alright guys, so we have a blank folder opened up in Visual Studio Code. Now the first thing we're going to do is we're going to open up the integrated terminal. Just going to clear this, and I'm just going to run npm init-y to create a basic package.json file. We're then going to run npm i-d, and we're going to install Electron. Now we can use, so how Electron works, it's actually built on top of Node.js. So you can use the whole of the Node.js modules and files inside of this app super easily. And I'm going to show you how you can use a couple of the built-in Node modules or packages to be able to create this Notes app here. So let's just clear this. So once we've done that, next thing we need to do is change this main entry to be the main.js file, because we're going to create a that's JKS, rename main.js file. There we go. Let's just close this, sorry, not clear it. And then in here, we're going to change the script to be the start script, and we're just going to say electron dot. That just means run an Electron app in this current directory, and it will target the main file, and that's going to be our main file here. So what we need to do is we need to reference a few things. We need to reference app and browser window from Electron. So we've got to require that in from Electron. And what we want to do is we want to create a new window. So we want to create a function called create window. And this is just going to say const win, short for window, is equal to a new browser. And we can pass a width and a height for what this app is going to actually start as. And there's more things to this. There's so many different parameters you can pass into this browser window here as options. And we're actually, let's just say 12, let's just say 640, let's do 768 by, let's say 560, something like that. Just some random arbitrary value that doesn't actually mean anything. And then all we're going to do is load a file. Now we're going to say win.load file, and this is going to be our source file, the file we want to target. And I'm going to create a folder called source here. So let's just create a source folder where we create our entry file here. And this is just a default HTML thing. This title here will reference the title of the actual window. So we can say Notes app, just like that. And then we can also link CSS in here. So we can say main.css. And we can link that by creating a file called main.css. And let's just run some super basic CSS to reset all of it. Just padding 0, box sizing, border box. And let's just give it a font family sans serif so it's not so boring. Let's give it a bit of padding around the edge and the background color as well, so it's not the default. And there you go. We'll leave that at that for now. That's all we need for this CSS file for now. We can also add a JavaScript, a script file, to our source here, and in our index we can just reference it like we would with normal JavaScript. So we can say script.js, and let's just pass through a h1 here. Let's give this the ID of title, and for now we'll just say hello world. Just like that. That should be good enough. In our main, we'll just console.log, because you can actually access the console by creating one of these. And there we go. So we've got hello world, and we're also going to console log hello world. This is going to call this, but this won't work yet because we need to check if app is ready. So we can either say on ready and call a function, or we can say when ready. We're then going to say then run create window. So we're going to get our app. Once it's ready, we're going to create a window. Now there's another thing we need to do. We need to create an app listener, and we're going to say on window all closed. So once all the windows have been closed, we want to close the app completely. But we don't want to do it for Mac OS, which is Darwin. So we can actually use process.platform to check what platform we're on. And you can see up here, you can see all the different options here. We could be on Windows, Linux, and on a bunch of others there. And we just want to check we're not on Darwin. And if we're not on Darwin, we're going to say app.quit. And that will quit us out of the app if we close the window as well. If we don't add this, when you close the window, the app may still be open and it causes some errors. I found that I can leave this out on Windows 11 and it will close the app, which is a good thing. But I'm pretty sure on like Windows 8 and 10 it doesn't. So I'm pretty sure I need this. But I'm not 100% sure. It definitely is needed for stuff like Linux and that. And on the Mac, we do not need this function. So there we go. So now we've got all of this all set up, and that should be everything we currently need to start our application. So we just need to say npm start. And here you go. We have our first app we've ever built from HTML and CSS. We can full screen this app. We can even change the size completely, just resize it. There you go. You can see it's responsive as well, breaking down. And there you go. If we close this, you can see it stops the server running there. And there we go. That's as simple as that. Now we've got this, we can do a bunch more of this. So for example, we can create a new file. Let's say we want a new page. We want a different page as well. Let's just copy this, paste it in. We can call this the about page. We don't need to reference our JavaScript, although I didn't show you the JavaScript working. I'll show you that in a second. And let's just create an anchor tag at the top here. Just say index.html. So we just have to reference the local file we want to swap to and just say home. Let's also give this a couple of break tags so there's space between these two elements here. And let's also copy this, pull it on our home page and change this to about and just say about.html. So let's run our server. Our application, and there you go. You see we've got this about link. If we click it, it takes us to the about page. If we click it again, we go back to hello world. Now if we press Control Shift and I, you can see it opens up the console, which is super useful. Let's just widen this a little, go to our console, and you can see our script has spat out hello world, which is great. You can also see we have these different things here, some undo things, some view, so we can actually reload it here, force reload the whole page. If there's any errors or you just want to reload, if you make a quick change, let's say instead of hello world, you say hello Tyler, and we go back to the app and we just hit Control R, you can see it refresh the page for us, and there you go. That's all working. And that's exactly what we're aiming to do here. So let me show you something else. So we can take this a step further. Now, what happens if you want to run some, let's say, functions which are only available to a normal, not to a website, but to, let's say, an app. Let's say you want to run a function where you create the note, for example. Well, we need a preload script. So let's just go in our root directory, create a new file and call this preload.js. Now this is going to be run before our actual pages are rendered. This will be called each time before our page are rendered. And we need to pull out something called the context bridge and the IPC renderer from our Electron package here. And the context bridge allows you to expose JavaScript or variables inside of our like app or our like the JavaScript here. Sorry. So let me just show you how this works. We're going to say context bridge dot expose in main world, and now we can give this a name. I'm going to call this data, or you can even say API. Actually, no, API sounds better. Let's stick with API. And then let's say we want to pass through a title. So let's say we want to send a title, and let's just call this my or the Note app. Something like this. There you go, the Note app. And we just want to send that variable into our world. Now you can pull this dynamically from somewhere, but we're just going to have it hard coded here for now. And we'll get to IPC renderer in a minute. Now let's go back to our script. So we've got our title being passed through. Now how do we use it? Well, the reason I gave this an ID is we're gonna get that ID inside of here. So we're gonna say const title element is equal to document.get element by ID, and that is title. We're then gonna say title element dot inner text is equal to, and we can say API dot title. So this API part comes from what we call it here, and now this is exposed as an object in our document. You can also say window.api, but we're just going to leave it a window for now. That should already have the context it needs to use that. And that should just work. However, we need to actually load our preload script, because this isn't going to run on its own. We need to call it inside of create, our main file. And to do that, what we want to do is underneath or before our, inside of our browser window object, we want to create so-called web preferences. And there's a bunch of options you can put in here, such as node integration, thanks CodeKit. But one of them we want is to say preload. And then we can actually pass through a path to our preload function. So we're going to say path.join dir name and preload JS. And that is going to run our preload script before it renders our pages. So let's have a look what happens now when we run this page. Let's just stop our app and just say npm npm start. And we have an error by the looks of it. Path is not defined. As you can see, I've used path, and that's a Node.js module which we need to actually import. We can say const path is equal to requiring the path module. So let's stop this again and rerun it. And there you go. You can see we've got it here. Now, if we open up the console, let's just make this bigger as well. Oh, I closed it. There we go. And open up the actual console in here. Wait a second. We don't need to do that. I think we can just write API. And you can see there, it shows the title has been passed through and our name is actually changed there. So in the preload app, we can change this to my Notes app, save, refresh our page, and you can see there it says my Notes app. It's been updated because that has been exposed in our scripts tag, our main script. So now we have that going through. What if we want to run a function? Let's say we have a function that we need Node.js to run, such as actually creating a file. Well, we need to bring through a couple more Electron packages or features, and we're going to call something called IPC main. Now, IPC is a way of talking between our script tag, or let's say our node server and our front end UI. And what we're going to do is down here before we load the file, just because IPC main handle, and now this is going to run, a handler runs a function. It listens for us to call a function, and we're going to say create file is the function name, or the IPC, the API point we're calling basically. And now we're going to get requests, and we can also get some data passed through from our actual front end. And now in here, we're just going to say if we don't have data, then return false, because that means there's been an error. We can also say, or if there's no data.title, or if there's no data.content, we're going to return with false. That means something's gone wrong and it's not worked. The next thing we can do is we then want to get a reference to our file path. And this is where we're going to save our note. And we need to also get something called const fs is equal to require fs, which is the file system inside a node. And let's just say path.join. And now we can say dir name. Dir name just gets the current directory's name. So this one here, our root name. And then we can say our notes app. And finally, we can actually pass through our data.title to our app. We can then say fs.write file synchronously, and we're going to pass through the file path and then the content we want to save inside of our node. And that is going to be our little data content here. So you can see we're saving a text file to a notes folder. We need to create this notes folder. So let's just create a notes folder in there. And there you go. We're then going to create it, and we're just going to say return true, which just means it's one. You can actually return an object here, and this will give, let's say, success true. And this is just going to return back to our front end saying, hey, it worked. We're going to get this object back. We can even pass through the file path as well, so we can actually see where it's saved. So here you go. That's now worked. But now how do we hook this up to our front end? Well, that's where the preload script comes in again. We can actually use this IPC renderer by doing something, let's say create note, and then we can pass through a data to our note, and we can say IPC renderer.invoke, and invoke will call a handler, and we need to give it the same name. So you can see we called it create file, so we can actually pass this through again. Create file, and then we can also pass through some arguments, which we're going to pass through our data. Now that should be everything we need to run this. So we can save, go to our script, and now we need to actually hook up the front end. So let's create, let's do a couple of break tags here and just do an input, or you know what, let's wrap it in a form. Actually, we don't need to. Let's just use an input. Just making it complicated. We'll do a text element called note title. We don't need a name. And then we can copy this and rename this to note content. And then we can create a button which says submit note. Something like that. And we'll give this the ID of submit note or note submit. And that should be everything we need to actually have this. If we refresh, you can see our boxes are appearing here. And if we go to our script, now we need to just write some functions. So we need to get the title element or the note title element, which is equal to document.get element by ID. And this would be note title. We also need to get the note content element, which will be equal to get element by ID note content. And finally, we need the note submit L, which is going to be note submit. Now we need to say note submit L dot add event listener click. So when we click on this, we're going to use an arrow function that says we're going to get the title. So we're going to say const title is equal to note title L dot value. Oops, don't want any of this yet. And there we go. We've also got the content value. We now need to say API.create note. So if you remember in here, we created another one called create note. And then we can pass through our title and our content. Hit save. And this should also be an asynchronous function because we are going to get a response back by saying await. And then we can log our response. We can then say title or note title L value is equal to an empty string, and same with the content there because that will reset our form for us. So let's just stop our server and restart it so we know it's all up to date. And there we go. We've got our little notes app here. We can go to our about page. Let's go back. Let's actually try and create a note. Let's say my first note. And then in here we can say this is my first ever note. Hit submit, and if we just press Control-Shift-I and open up the terminal and have a look at the console, you can see we get an object back saying where it's saved and if it was successful, which so far it says true. So let's have a look inside of here in our notes. You can see we have a note that says this is my first ever note. And that is all it is to make this such a simple application here. So we can do another one here. We could say my second note and just say this is for second note. Test. Submit the note, and there you go. We get our second note saved here, and that is how simple it is to build a Node or a Electron desktop application. And now this application, we can actually turn it into an actual .exe file. So let me just show you how we do it. Let's close this, stop this, and now to build it, let's just go to documentation. Okay guys, so to build an Electron app, we need to use a third-party, I think it's actually made by the same people, but we need to use a package called Electron Packager here to be able to actually turn it into a .exe or a .app file. So what we're going to do is go back to our app, and we're just going to say npm i-d. Oh, we could have just hit paste because I copied the thing from the GitHub repo. I will try and remember to link this in the description. If I forget, please just shout at me. I'll try and respond. And then here, now we've installed that, let's go back here and see how we actually run it. So you can see it says npm electron packager or npx. We can then pass the source directory, the app name, the platform, arc, and all of this. So if we just copy this, npx electron packager, and then dot will be the current source, I believe. Source, and then we can actually pass an app name too. So let's just go in here, paste this, and just say notes app. Hit enter and see what happens. Packaging app for platform Windows 32. And here you go. You see we've got this now notes application. Let's go have a look at this inside of our file explorer. We've got this notes application with this .exe here. Now, if you want this to be on your desktop, we can right click. Where's the create shortcut? Show more options. Create a shortcut. And there you go. We've now got a shortcut. We can drag this onto our desktop. If I can scroll to the top of this, here we go. Almost there. We can drag this onto our desktop, go to our desktop, and you can see it's here. Let's just rename this to something a bit more useful, say notes app.exe. And then we just double click this, and look, our notes app completely opens. We can then say notes or note and my note app. Submit note. Let's take a look here. So we can actually, or open it up inside. And you can see it's saved to Electron app tutorial. Can I see more? Notes app. So it saved it inside of our, this here. And we should have a note somewhere in here. There you go. So you can see here, if we go into our resources, our app, and our notes, our note is being created in here along with our other ones because it also packaged up the rest of them as well. But we can also change this. We could also change this notes to be a different location as well by changing the location of where we save it here. We can actually change this to be anything. We don't even have to do the current directory. We can do a like the downloads or a directory, or you can even have a thing where you choose where it's saved by selecting a file location on your app. But that is how you build your own Electron app, guys. I hope you've learned something new. I hope it's useful to you and you're going to build your own awesome apps. There's so much more to Electron too. I've only built the bare bones. I haven't even dived into the customizing the menu, and there's a bunch of, you can completely customize this menu. You can customize how it works. You can open up cameras. You can use microphones, connect to all of that stuff in your app and use it. Now, I'm not going to explain that in this video, but if that's something you're interested in, then let me know down below in the comments and I'll potentially create more tutorials on Electron and some more advanced stuff. For now, guys, if you enjoyed, don't forget to leave a thumbs up, smash that subscribe button, and I will see you in the next one. Peace out.